morning, everyone, and thank you for joining another WOW webinar. My name is Erin Alamdar, and I'm a Senior Digital Strategist here at WhereWhere. I'm really excited to talk to you today and share some tactical tips for amplifying your lead acquisition and nurture strategy using your website, content, and marketing automation. First off, our agenda, just so you know what we're going to be getting into, I'm going to give an introduction to why lead acquisition is important, and then go through 3 steps on how to create compelling content, how to leverage your website and marketing, and how to nurture your leads and follow up. And finally, how to measure the effectiveness of those tactics and just some quick takeaways and next steps. First, a little bit about WhereWhere. We're a digital agency that helps our clients drive smart growth through digital marketing strategy and activation. We've been in the business for over 20 years now, helping our clients grow their business through robust e-commerce websites, optimizing marketing strategy, and improving customer acquisition tactics. These are a few of our awesome clients, and also wanted to introduce one of our strategic partners, Acoustic Marketing Cloud. They are sponsoring today's webinar, and I will be referencing one of their awesome tools, Acoustic Campaign, that we use very extensively at WhereWhere. We have a lot of clients using it, and it's a great tool for lead acquisition and nurture. So first off, why is lead acquisition critical? If you're like most marketers, you can relate to this recent HubSpot survey that found that generating leads was a top priority for marketers in 2020. And along with that, having an optimized lead gen strategy is critical for acquiring new customers. Yet customer acquisition isn't cheap. Over 60% of marketers say their customer acquisition costs have increased in the last 3 years. That means marketers are in a cycle of constantly trying to generate more leads, convert them into customers, but we need to be careful with marketing spend and be mindful of costs, especially now more than ever. Luckily, there are dozens of channels and tactics that marketers can utilize to acquire customers at a lower cost. Here you can see that the top performing channels for lead acquisition, email, social, search engine, are all at minimal cost, and when executed correctly can have a maximum impact. So as I mentioned, we're going to be going through these 3 steps. Creating informative content that's tailored to your customer journey and delivering that across channels is a key part of lead acquisition and nurture. And optimizing your website and marketing to enhance the multi-channel experience that your customers are having. And then finally, using marketing automation to follow up and nurture prospects and get them over to your sales reps. So jumping into our first step, creating informative content. 55% of marketers say creating content is their biggest marketing priority. And when we're thinking about content and we're thinking about the traditional customer journey, you guys are all probably really familiar with this kind of funnel with awareness, consideration, and action. So if you think about the awareness stage, the content that goes along with that is more introductory to introduce your brand. Next, it's maybe going a little deeper, looking at reviews or a guide that compares you to your competitors. The next step is to get your prospects to take action. And finally, once they convert, to continue the relationship by re-engaging them. And wanting to create content for all of these channels or all of these different stages of the buying cycle can be challenging, but I do want to note that buying cycles are no longer linear. So today's typical buying cycle looks something a lot more like this. And your prospects will experience your brand and seek out information across channels, and you need to adjust your content strategy to account for that. It's difficult to control the order of content consumption now with this nonlinear buying cycle. So a robust content strategy for all stages and all channels is very key. In the example that I'm sharing today, I'm going to be speaking about the hub and spoke model for content strategy. And this concept is that there's one main hub around a certain topic, and then there are various different formats of the same type of topic, but delivered in different formats, like a webinar, white paper, videos that go into more detail. These are the spokes of the hub that is the main topic. The hub and spoke model allows you to create multiple content pieces in a variety of formats that can be distributed across various channels that are appropriate and make sense for them. So, you know, ebooks and white papers, those can be very enticing for a platform like LinkedIn. Infographics are great for Pinterest. So this just kind of gives you an idea of the different types of media that can be used to disseminate content. And then you need to think about your audience and where it's going to be most appropriate to distribute those content types. So how do we put this into action? Again, in the example that I'm sharing today, we have a fictional business called CD Savings Bank, and I'm going to be using this to demonstrate the tactics that can be used for optimizing marketing. And, you know, in this example here, a lot of lead acquisition starts at the website, and it starts with these opportunities to grow your email list. For example, someone at their first kind of experience going to your website, they can get there with a Google search query. So in this example, the prospect wants to know more about financial planning. So they're shown a pay-per-click ad and or a search listing, and both of these are driving back to the website or a landing page as shown here. This is a screenshot of a landing page that's been built out in Acoustic campaign. It can, you know, be built to match the branding of the website, can even be under the same domain or subdomain. So it's a really seamless experience for your users. And the main goal of getting someone from the pay-per-click ad to a landing page like this is to get their information captured in an email sign-up form or a simple form like this. And once you've got their attention with this landing page, you don't want to scare them off with a web form that's really clunky, that's asking for too much information up front. So making sure that that form user experience is, you know, really easy for the user to submit their information, making sure that you have descriptive labels, that key fields or required fields are denoted with an asterisk, and also making sure that you're following compliance with CAN-SPAM and GDPR are key things to consider when using web forms. Aside from landing pages and web forms, there are many other opportunities to capture lead info. Again, you have email sign-up forms on your website. You can gate any sort of content download with a web form like the one that I showed. There's also modal popovers, so the pop-up forms that come up on your website for unknown visitors. Those are all great ways to capture info, and capturing that lead info is a critical first step in lead acquisition. So capturing the lead info, once someone fills out a form with Acoustic Campaign, that form data goes directly into the database. So once the lead is in the database, the next step is to nurture that lead and follow up. And you can use Acoustic Campaign to prioritize leads and follow-up with lead scoring. So in this lead scoring example, you can set different numerical values based on behaviors like website visits, form submissions, and email engagement, and then set a threshold for when a lead reaches a certain score and they've completed all of these activities, you can set, say once they reach a score of 100, you're going to set up an alert to send them to a sales rep as a qualified lead. And it's really great in Acoustic that you can do this because, you can have this go directly out to your sales rep and customize the email body, the notification that they get, so that it has all of the contacts information that they filled out in the form. Another great feature in Acoustic for this is, in addition to that Webform data that's passed over via email, sales reps can also get insight into all of the behaviors that the prospect has engaged with in Acoustic, including, the emails that they've opened, the actions that they've taken on the website. And this is a really great at-a-glance way to make sure that your sales reps are informed so that when it's time for them to reach out to the customer, they're having really productive, personalized conversations. And finally, if your lead doesn't convert, a great way to retarget them through marketing automation is, with SMS marketing or emails or even retargeting ads on social media. And this goes back to a little bit of what I was talking about with the hub and spoke model, kind of using different content types on these different channels to see what's going to push that lead to conversion. And once the lead has converted, you want to use the data that you have to drive the next step. So this is kind of twofold. You want to make sure that you're capturing and tracking all of this data for one reason, to be able to replicate that process in the future, so that if you know the behaviors that lead up to conversion, you can recreate that experience for other prospects who meet the same sort of demographics and are showing the same sort of behaviors. And you can also personalize that user's experience moving forward once that they've converted. A great way to do that is through a re-engagement campaign. So in this example, you can do a re-engagement campaign that's tailored specifically to the demographic info that that you've captured about that lead. So if this person is, in this demographic, retarget them with some content that's relevant to them, saving for retirement. If the contact is, in this demographic, they might be more concerned about saving for college. So in Acoustic campaign, you can use that data to dynamically create emails and show content that's going to be relevant to your users based on the data that you have about them. A few quick lead nurture do's and don'ts. Don't oversend. I think that a lot of marketers can be, think that a really aggressive sending approach will get them to conversion, but it's better to use data to drive those decisions on how frequently you're going to contact your prospects. Use preference centers to let your prospects and your leads actually choose how frequently they want to hear from you. Don't send the same content to everyone. Think of ways that you can, again, use that hub and spoke model to personalize and create content that's going to make sense and provide value to your customers, depending on which channel they're in and depending on their demographics. Don't leave out your sales team. Your sales team and sales reps are the people who are ultimately, going to be the ones responsible for conversion, and make sure that you're setting them up for success with giving them those super helpful lead alerts and the contact insights from Acoustic that can give them the full picture of what the user has already experienced with your brand so far. Don't just use one channel. It's always a good idea to diversify across channels, and again, distribute content on those channels in a way that makes sense for that audience and for that channel. Always make sure that you're putting the value to the customer first. Some brands have a tendency to, talk about how great their company is and how great their product is, and make sure that you're leading in with the value proposition, especially in the prospect and lead phase. Make sure that your content is tailored to providing value for your customer and solving their problems. So kind of put yourself in that customer mindset and think through what's going to be the most valuable for them. And lastly, don't get stale. Make sure that you're continuously testing and optimizing different contacts or different tactics for your contacts and seeing what really works. And even if you get to a point where you feel like, if it's not broken, don't fix it, and you feel like everything's working really well, there's always opportunity for optimizations, and there's always different new types of strategies and tactics to test out. So I really encourage you, even if you're comfortable with where you are with your lead nurture strategy, to at least on a quarterly basis, take a look at those activities and make sure that you're not missing any additional opportunities. Lastly, once you've got all of this set up, make sure that you're measuring success. So to measure success and tailor your strategy, these are some key metrics that I would recommend looking at. Looking at website traffic and engagement time. So the time that people are spending on your site, the number of pages that they're visiting per session, looking at social media engagement, likes and follows, comments, and using all of that data again to help tailor which content that you're going to distribute where. Bounce rate is another key metric to really pay attention to. So when we talk about bounce rate, there's email bounce rate, and then there is website bounce rate. So if you're seeing users bounce from certain pages on your website or your home page, that means that they're spending less than 2 seconds on that page and they're exiting. And that can really hint to a lot of UX issues. It could be some technical issues with the site loading slowly. So if someone's getting to a landing page and they're immediately exiting out of it, then that could be a huge red flag that something needs to change on that landing page. For email bounce rates, if you're sending to a list of contacts and you're getting, over 2% bounce rates, that can actually point to an issue with the quality of the leads that you're getting and the quality of contacts that you're getting. So there's a lot that can be done around that, like form validation rules, to make sure that you're getting email addresses and that you're getting contact data that is valid and that is from people who actually want to hear from you. Also, these are some additional metrics. So thinking about goal completions in Google Analytics, things like content downloads, white paper downloads. You can have custom goals set up so that you're tracking those accurately, and attribution models so that you know where your traffic is coming from and what that conversion path looks like. Make sure that you're tracking your email sign-up growth over time. There are definitely trends in this that you can see. If you have like a pay-per-click campaign going on, or another type of advertising campaign, and you see an increase in web traffic, an increase in email sign-up growth, you can kind of start tying those activities together and figure out what's really effective and what works for your brand. And finally, going to wrap up with some key takeaways and next steps. So I know I mentioned this a couple times, that the customer journey is no longer linear. So, going back to that graphic where that shows that those interactions can happen on multiple channels, multiple times, and really making sure that your content is designed specifically for those channels and is going to be easily consumable at any stage in the customer journey. Personalize and segment. So all we mentioned about using data to drive your strategy, use that demographic data to think about, things like a person over 65 is going to be more interested in retirement. So show them that type of content rather than just sending the same content to everyone. And definitely using web forms and incentives to capture lead info. So that landing page that we looked at, you entice the user with providing them some information that's relevant to their search query. They see the pay-per-click ad, they go to the landing page, they're excited about this resource, that's why they clicked on it. And gating that content with a web form is a really effective way to make sure that you capture them and that you can retarget them and nurture them. And again, using data and scoring models to prioritize follow-ups and automate re-engagement. And lastly, if you're hearing all of this and you're thinking, how do I get started? And maybe you need some help. We do at WhereWhere offer some packages that, combine SEO, email, content, Facebook, and reporting to help you really optimize your lead acquisition and nurture goals. And this is kind of our bread and butter of what we do at WhereWhere, as well as web development, some of the other services that I mentioned. But these are the different packages that we offer. And if you're interested in any of these, please reach out to sales@wherewhere.com and they can give you more information about any of these packages. But, we practice what we preach, and we're offering different types of packages that are going to make sense for you. So there's different options to discuss there. And lastly, if there are any questions in the chat, I have a couple minutes that we can start addressing some of those. Okay. So first question from Denise, how do you get the numerical value to attribute to behaviors in the scoring model? So there's a lot of kind of different methodologies around this. It's going to depend on your data and it's going to depend on your customer journey. So I would really encourage you to look at, what users have done in the past that led to conversion. And, certain activities are going to be weighted more. WhereWhere has a kind of a system that we use to prioritize those options. So again, if you're interested in getting some help with that, definitely reach out. And another question about how to capture profile data without a super long form. That's a great question because I think that there's a tendency to want to capture a lot of information up front, and really that can kind of scare away prospects if you're asking for too much up front. So keep the initial form short and sweet. And then one thing that you can do is in a retargeting campaign and in the next interaction that the prospect has after, they've given you like maybe first name, last name, email address, you can use what's called a progressive profiling form that asks for a little bit more information on top of what you already have. So say they come back to your website again for a second time, you can ask them maybe what their job title or company name is. So thinking of that way, that progressive profiling methodology, it's still giving you that rich data without necessarily scaring away your prospects with a super long web form up front. Oh, another question, what's considered more valuable or hotter leads, those from paid ads or organic search? Again, I think that that's really going to depend on your brand and what's kind of worked in the past. I think with paid ads, they are paying per click. So I think that if you wanted to put a little more priority towards those and make sure that those are being accurately followed up with, that's something to consider. But it really depends on kind of your paid ad strategy as well. And, one other note that I'll say on that is that paid pay-per-click advertising and organic search works hand in hand. Don't do one without the other. Your SEO is going to support your pay-per-click efforts, so make sure that those strategies are aligned as well. Okay, what types of content should be in a web form? Should it just be captured or more in-depth pieces on ebooks and white papers, or leave the shorter introductory content ungated? I think that's a great question. My instinct is to say that any opportunity that you have to capture more data, use it. If you have that content, even if it's shorter introductory content, If it provides value to the customer and if it's something that they really want, they're going to fill out that form. So I would encourage you to test that out, and you can do like a split A/B test on different types of content, and I would look at the amount of people that are bouncing from the web form for that specific content. If it's like if it's like a shorter content piece, and then see that versus like the ungated and see if it really makes an impact. So when we say, continue to test and optimize, that's really the only way to figure out some of those things too, just because it depending on your brand and your website. And yeah, there's another question about long form versus short form content, and what the trend is. I would say that it's probably trending more towards short form content. People have short attention spans these days, so we want to keep content, again, highly valuable to the customer, but also bite-sized and consumable as possible. And I think that there's always opportunities to diversify your content and make sure that you have a mix of both. And again, test it out and see what works for your audience. And I think that is the last question, and we're right at almost 11:30. So thank you all so much for joining. If you have any questions that you think of later, definitely reach out. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or connect with our sales team. But yeah, thank you all for joining. You'll get this deck via email shortly, and be on the lookout for the next WOW webinar.